he is not really interested whether there was an immaculate conception or not, or whether the star was there, or whether the wise men went there. But it is the idea of figure of Jesus on cross, and it's that passion of Christ which moves him deeply.
No, that's really quite profound, because it's almost as if Gandhi is saying, look, move the dogma aside, move aside all the doctrines, and get to the essence of the teaching.
He says, I regard him as perhaps the greatest teacher that mankind has seen.
For Gandhi, the real Jesus was not the one developed in the church over the last 2,000 years, the Son of God, born of a virgin, who was the only path to salvation. Gandhi's Jesus was the original charismatic teacher, the man of action, who wanted to change the world. And Gandhi found the core of Jesus' teachings in the Sermon on the Mount.
What is the lesson from the sermon that he requires? One, that you cannot hate. It's not an active notion of love. It's not an active notion of compassion. It is a negative notion first, that no matter what it is, no matter how hard my opponent is, no matter how tyrannical my opponent is, do I have the capacity not to hate? Two, of course, the idea of non-resistance. At the same time, it is not an inactive non-resistance. It is an active act of non-resistance to the evil.
Gandhi took Jesus' teachings and transformed them into one of the most powerful political weapons of the 20th century, his philosophy of non-violent resistance. In his long struggle for Indian independence from the British Empire, Gandhi's most famous act of resistance took place when he set out on a march in 1930. The right to manufacture salt was a British monopoly. As a symbolic act of defiance, Gandhi planned to break the law by making salt on the coast. But first, he had to march there.
This is really the first place where Gandhi halted. They had walked 13 kilometers that day. By the time they reached here, it was afternoon, and it was a huge reception that the village gave.
I think Gandhi's salt march can be compared to Jesus' final entry into Jerusalem, the culmination of his ministry and his life. Both involved a major confrontation. For Jesus, it was the Romans and the Jewish religious authorities. For Gandhi, it was the British Empire. And for both, it was a highly dangerous strategy.
I mean, what do you think was going through the people's minds? Were they apprehensive? Were they optimistic? Did they feel they were going to make it?
Gandhi had expected that he would be arrested the night before, and so the expectation was that British would put him into custody. What happened was completely took him by surprise, because when he began walking on 12th March, the entire city walked with him. And they had to stop in the city and plead with the people in Ahmedabad to please go back. 30,000 people.
30,000 people
walked with him.
It's amazing. People probably saw this as the beginning of a revolution.
It was the same with Jesus. As he entered Jerusalem, he was also mobbed by a huge crowd. Today, in many of the small villages that Gandhi marched through, local people have built statues to commemorate their hero.
I just wonder if you could ask the people what Gandhi means to them now. What does he mean to their lives? Seeing this bust here, what does Gandhi mean to them?
Father of the nation.
Father of the nation. What does Gandhi mean to you?
Gave us independence.
With his salt march, Gandhi had started a revolution that later brought an end to British rule in India, just as Jesus caused uproar in Roman Palestine 2,000 years ago.
Okay, so where are we now?
This is a place called Navagam, and there is a statue of Gandhi which tells us that he spent the second night in Navagam, and the only place which could have housed him was the village school. There's a cross, there's the sign of the Om, and there is the crescent moon, which says, "My life is my message."
And this is really quite profound because it tells us a great deal about Gandhi, bringing together Christianity with Hinduism, with Islam, and saying that what really matters is how you embody it, how you actually practice these ideas.
As we were talking, an elderly man walked up. It turned out that he was here when Gandhi arrived on his march in 1930.
Given that I'm making a program about Jesus, does he feel that Mahatma Gandhi was like Jesus? Because I see some comparisons in terms of their teachings. Does he feel that Gandhi was for him like a messiah, a savior figure?
पैगंबर कृष्ण का राम ये बातों से आप जोया नहीं बापुए तो जे करू से जाते जोयू से रहने साथे रहे से.
He says he was godlike. He says, you know, the prophet or Krishna or Ram are only stories for me. Yeah? But here is this man who I have seen, who I have lived with, and I have seen him transform all of us.
What was the most important thing he learned from Gandhi? What meant the most to him 70 years on?
અત્યારે બાપુજી મેં ઘરે કહું મારો કપડો તો હું જાતે ધોઈ નાખીને ફૂંકી દઉં છું.
This is one word, self-reliant. Do your own work yourself. He says, I still wash my clothes, do everything that, you know, all the bodily work that I need to do, I do it myself, and I don't rely upon people. And said, I hope to be able to do that, you know, till the very last.
That's a really powerful message because when many people think of the teachings of Jesus, and I'm searching for the real Jesus, they think about the spiritual things, Jesus as the Son of God, or the dogma, the Trinity, or ideas about spirituality which are very kind of otherworldly. But here, what we find in the teachings, and what he said about, what he remembers most about Gandhi, and where it connects with the message of Jesus, is in the practical.
Yes.
The fact that to have faith, to be a person of faith, is to live.
Yeah, live that faith, live that idealism, and that's why he could say, "My life is my message." Yeah? And then,
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Happy Diwali.
The Salt March was an absolutely pivotal moment in Gandhi's and India's struggle against the British, and some commentators have argued that it was the beginning of the end of the British Empire. Since then, Gandhi's brilliant use of non-violence has been emulated by hundreds of resistance movements around the world. It was used by Martin Luther King in his struggle for civil rights in America, by Nelson Mandela in his fight against apartheid in South Africa, and by Lech Walensa's solidarity movement in Poland. All of these movements of oppressed and marginalized people for justice and human rights can trace their origins back to Gandhi and his inspiration, his teacher, the author of the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus himself. Just outside the village of Nag Hammadi in Egypt is a complex of caves carved out of a massive cliff. In December 1945, there was an extraordinary archaeological discovery here. A local farmer was searching for some fertilizer when he uncovered an ancient clay jar. When he broke it open, he found 13 manuscripts containing 52 religious and philosophical texts. It has been described as one of the greatest discoveries in Christian history. The texts that were uncovered revealed a version of Jesus' story that had been hidden away for over 1600 years. The Christianity we have today is largely based on the work of one man, Paul. For Paul, Jesus was a heavenly being sent to earth to save the world from sin. Over the last 2,000 years, Christianity has built a huge edifice to affirm those basic ideas. A theology around Jesus, the Son of God, born of a virgin who died and was resurrected. It is Paul's version of Christianity that dominates the world today. What was discovered here in this cave over 60 years ago revolutionized scholars' understanding of early Christianity, and in particular, I believe it revealed the